Hello and welcome to ICS Arabia podcast. Today we have a very special guest and very special episode. Our guest, Rob Lee. I think maybe most of you know him, and if you don't, this is the right time or the right episode to get to know him because I will be asking him a lot about him and how he got started and his OT journey in general. Because maybe some of my audience in the Middle East, maybe they don't know him. So it's now, I think this is a great opportunity to
The
get to
Middle
know
East is like my second home. Hopefully they do. I don't know.
him. Yeah, we're gonna go to this and tell us about the
Yeah.
Middle East later, about the Middle
Yeah,
East adventures that he had in the past. Could you tell us, please? Hi, Robert. Thank you for joining us.
of course. Yeah. Thanks
And
for having me.
could you tell us about? I mean, I know most of people know you, but maybe some don't. So I want to make this episode and get to know you. Could you introduce yourself and how did you get started with OT security and
Sure.
cybersecurity in general? Thank you.
Sure. So Rob Lee, I'm the CEO and co-founder over at Dragos, and then I'm also SANS fellow. I've created a number of the SANS industrial control system classes over the years, and then I also serve over in the Army National Guard, where design out response plans for the country and what we might do in conflict scenarios. I got started actually in the Air Force side of the house, so. My journey started as an Air Force officer. It was a cyber warfare operations officer, which is a fancy title for offense and defense. And the sort of the journey for me, I had a small background working with an organization called Engineers Without Borders, where I would do humanitarian projects in places like Cameroon, building out wind turbines and to do car battery charging and water filtration systems and so forth. And I was just always in love with what control systems could do for communities. Right, you get a mom who's like working all day long, and she comes home. She wants to get her kid educated so the kid can get out of their situation. And when the sun goes down, that's it. Can't really stay up and study. And so even having a wind turbine makeshift with connected to a car battery to charge to power LEDs at night in the house were wonderful, just transformations for these communities. So I really, really liked control systems. When I joined the Air Force, I got tasked over to the National Security Agency. And they told me, "I want you to build a new mission to go find the unknown unknowns, like find the threats we're not thinking about today." I was like, "Okay, what are you guys doing on industrial control systems?" And they're like, "What are ICS?" And I was like, "All right, this is what we're gonna do." And so I built the U.S. government's first mission, looking into how to find and respond to industrial control system threats. And so it just sort of took off from there. Did years of Air Force and NSA, then I left when the time was right and doing the SANS classes, and then responded to the Ukrainian cyber attacks when those took place, taking down the power systems there. And then I saw a lot of IT security people say that IT, OT, it's the same thing. And if they just bought a firewall, they've been fine. I'm like, that's not accurate. And so 10 years ago, my co-founders and I founded Dragos because I would like my kids to have lights and water when they grow up. And so I figured there needed to be a dedicated OT security player. So that's been kind of the journey so far.
Okay. So let's get from the start. I mean, you started with the NSA or the Army?
Yeah, I was an Air Force. I was an Air Force officer tasked to the NSA.
Okay. And they task you to do the OT.
Yeah, they said go find the threat groups that we're not aware of, and I said we should do that in OT. And so yeah, I built out the first mission set doing that.
Yeah. And may I know how did you get your experience back then to deal with this such thing?
Oh, that
OT?
self-taught. There was a lot
All
of
right.
like, yeah, so it was a lot of like go buy engineering books, go buy, whatever. I'd buy parts off of eBay and build like a home lab and start teaching myself stuff. So a lot of my SANS classes back then, like SANS ICS 515, that was just here's what I just did myself. Let me codify that and teach
Wow.
you guys. And so a lot of it was I did it and I try to pass on the knowledge.
So the science course was before you joined
No, it
the
was
mission.
after. So
After.
so it was when I was in the Air Force and in the NSA, we had a workforce problem. It was where do you find these ICS unicorns? And so I was teaching and training myself and building out labs. And then I went at the same time I was at the NSA, I went over to SANS and started making the courses because I figured if we have trouble finding people, everybody's having trouble finding people. And I selfishly wanted to have training material for my own Air Force folks and NSA folks, whatever. So I built the courses in mind with having practitioners that could come and join like my mission set.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, this makes sense now. So it was like learn as you go. That's what
Yeah, yeah,
you thought.
yeah. I think that's true today too. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay. And what's I mean, I heard about but I haven't met Michael Asante, right?
yeah, yeah,
He,
yeah.
he
He's the
was
one that
your
Yeah, he was the
yeah.
one that pulled me over. He was like part mentor, part brother,
Mm.
and he was the one that when I was at the agency, he brought me in to take one of the SANS classes they had, to evaluate it, and I told him, I was like, this isn't going to get my people the value they need, and he's like, well, then you make it yourself, then, and so then I made the course, and so yeah, he was yeah, Mike Asante, Tim Conway, and I were the ones that sort of got together to do a bunch of interesting things back then.
Okay. And regarding the OT incident, like Ukraine, I saw a video, documentary video, interviewing you about what's happened in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the investigation?
Yeah, so I when the attack happened, I got a phone call from some of my partners that were over there because I had just gotten out of the military and had just gotten out of the NSA, and in a global audience, governments knew to call me, just
Mhm.
because of the work that I did when I was at the NSA, and so I got a phone call, saying, "Hey, there's a power outage in Ukraine, 2015 in December." They said, "We think it might be cyber. Like, we really need your help." And at first, I was like, "It's probably not cyber." I was like, I'm getting married like tomorrow. Like, like this is bad timing. Thanks anyways." And then in the morning, Mike Asante called me and was like, "Rob, I think it's real, and we need to go." And I was like, "Okay, let me wrap this wedding up." And so I had talked to my wife, and she was cool with it. And so I got involved that day. And so Mike Asante, Tim Conway, and I led the investigations into what took place there, and then ended up telling the world about Sandworm and what was taking place, and sort of the various adversaries. And yeah, it was interesting and fun work. And the Ukrainians did like such a good job. Like that, honestly, they were amazing with how they handled themselves. And then I've been involved in most of the major cases, everything from Ukraine 2015, Ukraine 2016, played a role in the Trisis case in Saudi Arabia in 2017, tracking the extent of time, the adversary group there. I did the Colonial Pipeline investigation in the US. And then there's been a lot more that luckily have not been in the media. But I've been involved in a number of major cases. Now, though, my team takes most of them. And I feel great about that because I think
Yeah.
anyone in the world would be very comfortable if I came in to help in their incident just by reputation. But my own team would be like, no, 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 stay out. We got this covered. And so I think it's good that my team is a lot better than I am, and so you're in better hands with them.
Okay. So now you just manage the team and
Yeah, just
don't
the
get them.
CEO. Yeah, finally made it just management. They'll let me play around every now and then if it's an interesting case, but no, most of my time is empowering them to go be successful.
Okay, cool. So you got involved with Ukraine before you had the company, right?
Yes,
Before.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
so the company was kind of a thesis off of Ukraine because
mm,
when I came back briefing the White House and the various communities and stuff off of what happened, I saw a lot of chief information officers and chief information security officers telling people, "Oh, don't worry, that can't happen here." Or, "Oh, if you just deploy antivirus and firewalls, you'll be fine." And I knew that's not what had happened. And in the case of industrial control system attacks and OT attacks, a lot of the things we care about most is the misoperation of our environment. We care about exploits, vulnerabilities, and malware, but not as much as in IT. Most
mm,
of the attacks are using the native functionality of the environment.
yeah.
And so all the security recommendations that IT was saying were completely mismatched with what you needed to do in industrial control systems. And so after Ukraine, I went to my co-founders and said, "Look, we kind of need to get the band back together from the agency days, and we need to create software, but we need to have services, intel, and software because it's that combination and focusing explicitly on OT. Otherwise, the IT security community is not going to do this, And I think we're going to be in a bad shape as a society if you're protecting your website more focused than your gas turbine and where you generate impact in the community.
Okay. Um, and what about the Trisis? Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, so Trisis I thought was a really interesting case that still there's some misunderstanding of.
Yes.
So there was a company, and I think we all know who, but I don't usually like naming companies, but it was a company that got hit with Trisis. And what had happened is this group that we track as Exenotime had compromised that organization back in 2014 in the enterprise IT networks, had moved into the operations networks. They went straight for the SIS, the safety instrument system, looked at it, learned it, said, hey, this is a Schneider Electric Triconic system. And then they left for 3 years. And in that 3-year period, they developed the Trisis capability, the malware to go after that system. So 3 years later, in 2017, they came back in and went after the safety system. Now, what happened was they made a mistake. And so they were using the engineer workstation and the native communications, the native protocols to then modify the logic on the safety system. The intent of that is you modify the logic to remove the safety structure, remove the safety logic, but you do it in such a way that the system's still running. It looks like it's operational. It looks like it's fine. And then you follow up on the DCS, the distributed control system, and cause like an overpressurization event or similar, and you can kill people. So the intent of the attack was to kill people at that site. But they made a small mistake. And so instead, the system dropped. The safety system came down, so the plant shut down. The plant operators are like, hey, that's weird. They called the IT security team and said, can you take a look? Maybe it's one of these cyber things. The IT security folks didn't have an OT background. They came down, they looked, they ran indicators of compromise, things like that, and said, nope, there's nothing here. You're good to go. So they went back into production, and the adversary got a second chance. As the adversary sort of updated Trisis, fixing what they thought the error was, then redeployed it across a number of the sites at that plant. And then they were going to try to kill a lot of people at that site. And because they didn't fix the right error, it dropped all the systems, all those safety systems that they targeted. And this time the operations people were like, no, something is wrong, like call for help. And so what ended up happening is it wasn't Saudi Aramco that got hit. Like the media said it was Aramco. Aramco didn't get hit. What happened was Aramco was kind of the heroes of the story. It wasn't Dragos, it wasn't Mandiant and FireEye, it was Aramco. So Aramco folks came in like Nasser and Julian and folks. They went in to actually do the incident response, do the investigation. Julian did this amazing, like found Trisis, tore it apart, did this amazing work, sort of writing this report and so forth, and trying to help them in incident response. Aramco was just being a good neighbor. They're just lending their OT security people. They got some fantastic OT security folks, lending them to help out. But there was a lot of sort of things go on, politics happen, et cetera. And there was this discussion of maybe these Aramco guys aren't right. Call in Mandiant to come validate and do kind of a compromise assessment and validate the Julian's report. And so the Mandiant folks validated the Julian's report was right and like, hey, this is a big deal. We can help you to clean up. And Mandiant's a great team, so let's do some fun stuff together. But also like this is accurate. This Trisis malware. The Dragos piece of it was we were already tracking that threat group, Exenotime. So we weren't the incident response team, but we were tracking the threat group and seeing that they were targeting a number of different companies. And we ended up getting access to the malware, Trisis, reverse engineering it, understanding what it could do. And then we ended up reaching out to folks saying, hey, we've got this threat group. We know they're targeting some of these sites. And we know their capabilities. Like, do you need help? And what do you have? And so then the collaboration started working together. And eventually FireEye published a report. And so we published our report as well. And then we've been tracking Exenotime since then. And they've targeted a number of places around the world. And even just last year, they also started looking at different electric systems across a couple different countries in the United States and otherwise. So they're a very, very capable group. But what I would call out is it was Julian and Nasser that really did an amazing work, in the Aramco OT security team that did amazing work helping out somebody that was going through that. And so I always think that's a great Arabia case study.
Okay. And who's Julian?
Julian is I don't know where he's at nowadays. So he was an Australian expat that was working at Aramco.
Okay.
So him and Nasser came to Dragos later. And so we ended up hiring them after Aramco with permission. But we hired them after Aramco. They were on our incident response team for years, and then Nasser went off to do his own thing. And Julian, I'll have to look him up. I don't know where Julian is these days.
Talking about the Arabs in the Middle East, I've noticed that you have some Arabs working for Dragos.
Yeah. So we have
Yes.
a Emirati entity, and we have a Saudi Arabian entity as well. So we don't just do here's a PEO, whatever hiring. We wanted to invest, right? So the Middle East has been a long time friends of mine, and so we built a company there. So Dragos, Saudi Arabia, Dragos, UAE, and hire local employees, hire as many locals as we can, and have invested in the region for a long time. And really that comes from, my background in the military. I had known the Saudi Arabians specifically. Like, of course, I love the Kuwaitis and the Qataris and everybody else as well. But I worked very closely with Saudi Arabian counterparts when I was in the military, and I got to know them for years as friends in difficult situations and counterterrorism and all sorts of other stuff that we worked on together. And so I just always had a deep respect and love for the Middle East and partners that I developed there. And so 10 years ago, we founded the company, and like 10 years ago, so it was the first partner that we had. I was introduced through some people, was introduced to a gentleman named Dr. Saad, and Dr. Saad was going to go build this company. He said that he wanted to start having like Saudis protect Saudi infrastructure. And like, I resonated so much with that man because he talked so much about mission and community and all the things that are important at Dragos. And and so I said, Dr. Saad, you're like our sister company. This is beautiful. I'll stay aligned with you. And he ended up founding this company called Site. And they were the first partner at Dragos with Site. And when you build a company, especially out of the US, you don't think to go to Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar first. You do the US market. If you do another one, you do like big GDP markets like Germany, maybe then you do England or whatever. And for me, the first place we went was Saudi Arabia. And it didn't make sense financially. And it didn't make sense, it's a horrible financial choice actually. But it made sense on mission. It made sense on community. It made sense going with my friends. And so I've been in Saudi Arabia for many, many years. And I've always felt treated like a partner. And I would say there's two people in the world that I consider my brother. One of them is Tim Conway. The other is Dr. Saad. So it's a place that will always be and always continue to invest in.
Oh, so I mean, when you started Dragos and you went to Saudi, you know people before you started.
I've had various connections in the kingdom over the year, and like I said, they've always just treated me like a partner, even when times were very, very rough, and politics swing left and right and all sorts of other things. And I always felt that we were just considered part of the family, like part of the network. And there was never any of that with us. There was never any drama. And it was just good people wanting, and also just the technical talent. Like, what drives me is mission and culture. And that's why I do what I do at Dragos. Like, let's keep bad guys out of infrastructure. Every 35-year-old mom in the world deserves to go home to her 5-year-old child. Like, let's keep civilians out of this. It's kind of the mindset that I have. And so that is matched in Saudi Arabia, but also if you look at Saudi Arabia, you look at UAE, you look at in Qatar and Oman, like you have some amazing technical talent, and it was generated from, you've got all this oil and gas infrastructure to start with, and the water infrastructure, and everything else, and you needed to digitize it, you needed to lean on automation, and you had to have a workforce to be able to do that. And so there's just an immense amount of technical talent, and then you get a lot of attacks. You got some regional neighbors that don't like you. And so you get attacks and technical talent. That's where you generate expertise. And so I always felt that we were going to see some, if enabled correctly and if empowered and invested in correctly, I always figured that we were going to get some of the best ICS security researchers, responders, et cetera, out of the Middle East in terms of a global discussion, just by that technical expertise and by necessity and experience.
Interesting. And it's great to hear that the Middle East has this technical talent. You are as a witness. As a CEO, how do you hire or how do you recruit somebody to Dragos? What's your criteria?
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think you hire on culture, and you hire on mission. You can teach skills. Now, to be fair, you got to have a certain baseline of skills for the different levels, right? Junior level, I don't expect anything, but if you're getting hired into a principal level, I expect you to know something about industrial control systems. But we focus a lot on the culture and hiring. Now, what we don't do and is we remove everything that speaks to opportunity. What I mean by that is some people have the opportunity to go to SANS course, some don't. Some people have the opportunity to go to college, some don't. And so I don't want to limit the workforce by opportunity. And so we remove from the when it goes to like a job manager, when it goes to the hiring manager, we remove out of everybody's CVs any reference to college, certifications, any of that stuff. We remove all of it and we just look at what they've actually done. And it doesn't have to just be job experience. It could be publishing papers, it could be doing workshops, but what have they actually done? And that gets considered. If we think this person can be successful in the role that we have at that time, then we put them in front of their own team. And so it's not just going through managers, whatever. It's like 4 or 5 people from the team that you're going to will sit down and talk to you and engage with you. And it's not just technical questions or some of that, but it's a lot of like trying to figure out how you think about the problem, how you think about our community, how do you think about the mission, and they're assessing on culture, and so that's the type of people you hire. And then, as you can imagine, it's a small enough community. We've got about 580 employees today. There's a lot of people that know us, and there's a lot of people who know the people that work here. And so usually recruitment is not our biggest problem. Usually when we open up a job application, we're getting hundreds of people to apply. And then it's just trying to filter out who wants to be here. You know?
Okay. When you started Dragos, did you expect it to be a success, or what did you imagine it would be like this, or
No,
what was your vision?
I've never thought, and this is going to sound bad, but I've never thought about the future in terms of what is it going to look like in terms of like the value of it. And so we're a multi-billion-dollar value company. But I would never would have thought about that. I wouldn't have said like, oh, it can't, or it won't, or it will. It wasn't what interested me. What I wanted to do was build the long-term player in this community. I wanted to build the OT security company that was going to be a partner to these companies going down this very difficult journey. So I always thought about long-term things. And so even when I took venture capital, I've raised over $400 million. Even when I took venture capital, I didn't always take the highest value. It was who are the right partners for this journey? Who's going to be there with me in the hard days? Who wants to let this thing live on, long term? And so I always thought about it that way, but I didn't know if it was going to be successful. I mean, 10 years ago, when I talked to investors, I took 123 different venture capital meetings to raise money for the company. And all of them, but all of them are like, you're stupid, you're crazy, this is a bad idea. And it was various degrees of OT, that's going away. Isn't it just going to be IT OT convergence? There would be no OT market. Then there was ones that said, like oil and gas companies, electric companies, water companies, they're such slow buyers and they're old and like it's not worth doing. And then there was various we're just going to various levels of this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
And at the time, it wasn't like I thought they were all wrong. I wasn't arguing with them. What I was saying was, I don't care if you think it's a bad idea for a business. It's worth doing. Like the mission needs done. So we're going to go do it. And if we are successful, great. If I put all our heart and soul into this and the community doesn't embrace it, then we tried our best. But this is worth doing. And what we found was the electric companies, the oil, gas companies, et cetera, they didn't have anybody who was coming to speak to them in their language and industrial control systems and building them something specific. And so it was an overwhelming community response. And so we were growing 100% year over year in growth and everything. So it was an overwhelming community response that the financial community just didn't understand. And so today, we're, like I said, it's a multi-million-dollar company, all that stuff. But at the beginning, there was no OT market.
No. Yeah. So when you talk to the investors, did you tell them you are a service company or a product company or both? What did you tell them?
It was always the solution. It was, I'm going to build software that goes and finds, does asset mitigation, vulnerability management, threat detection. Like, I'm going to build a software platform, not one use case, but the OT platform for you. I was like, but I don't think you build the best software without the best people. So I'm going to have services people who live this day in, day out and understand what maybe more than what our customers know at the time. And I'm going to build an intel team as well that goes and tracks and hunts these threats and understands them, so that as we do that, that what we're building is informed by the threats and informed by the use cases of our analysts. And a lot of companies have rolled out a firewall before or antivirus before. Doing the next one isn't a big journey. You're just learning a little bit new. But not many people have done an OT security program. And so, especially at that time. And so the idea that we were just going to go sell you a box and walk away wouldn't have done anything. It wouldn't have gotten the mission accomplished. And so we've always told people, you don't need to use our services. You can just buy the software if you want. But if you need us, we're there for you and we'll be your partner on that journey. And so it was always the same since day one. What kind of bit us was we were never very pitchy. We didn't go and be like, look at their software and it can solve all your problems and RSA booths and whatever else. We didn't do that. We just showed up and like did the engagements and published research and all that. And so people saw us publishing research and incident response lessons learned and stuff. And they went, oh, they're a services company. Like, no, we're just not like dirty sales tactics. We got positioned that way early on, but over time people are like, oh, wow, no, actually this platform is fantastic as well, especially when our own people are using the same software to go achieve these outcomes. People are like, oh, well, I want that now. And so it's always been since day one, kind of the same vision.
Nice. And who published the research? The people who do the services themselves, or there are specific team like for research?
So the Intel team publishes theirs and the services team publishes theirs. I have a very strong opinion about this inside of Dragos, and I was actually talking about it today with one of my leads. Like, marketing does not write that content. I don't want them involved. I don't want marketing or sales saying, hey, do you guys have an Intel report on this? Like, stop it. It should be, let the experts go write what they're seeing, the truth, regardless if it's selling our product or not. Like, what are we actually seeing out there? Go say that. And then good marketers, good salespeople can take that kind of authentic content and then go amplify it and then go create derivative content and so forth. So I think what that's meant over the years is whether people have agreed with us or not, whether people like us or not, everybody knows we're authentic. That if we say something, it's because we mean it. If we say something, it's because we're seeing something that tells us to say that. But we'll, in our year in review report, every year we put the Dragos year in review report, we'll highlight things like, hey, remote access is a huge issue and you need to be investing in secure remote access. We don't sell secure remote access, but that's what we're seeing. So we should authentically be telling people that this is a risk for you. And so I like that style a lot more.
Okay, cool. And what about the language? They say there is a business language. Do the companies understand your?
Yeah, I mean, being a technical founder, being that level, I'm able to speak to the services and Intel people and so forth, and the engineers and software developers, and I'm obsessive of, like, if there's a problem, I'm going to learn everything about it and to be able to deal with it. I get pretty obsessive, and so I did the same on the business side, and so I know GAAP revenue accounting. I understand, recognized revenue and all that. Like, I learned all the business language and the business outcomes. I learned the technical stuff, and so it allows me to kind of jump into any team and add value. Now, the better thing is I have amazing people, so I don't have to get involved in everything, but by knowing enough of their job, I can hold them accountable and help coach them better. And I think that would be a tip I'd give most people is some folks think there's like a manager skill. Like, I'm going to be a manager. I don't agree with that. I mean, there are good managers and bad managers, but I think what there is your profession and you know it well enough to teach others and coach others. And so to me, the best managers understand each of the job roles of the people they're managing and can add value. And there's no like, I don't need to know the technical details. I'm just a manager. That doesn't fly at Dragos.
Oh, okay. And that is your culture, that everybody has to understand everything.
Yeah, everybody has to understand their field. So, like, as an example, my senior vice president of Intel and services, Kurt Gaudet, he was senior NSA leader. He knows inside and out about threats, intelligence work, et cetera. But he's over the intel and services business. So I said, Kurt, you're going to start off doing half of your job. But I don't care if your VP underneath you is good. I need you to be good in the services. And so I made him go into the services team, almost like individual contributor level, understanding the engagements, understand what's going on, not just being a good manager, but like you better understand your business. What do your people do? Every single role on your team. And therefore, he's learned all of that. And he's very capable and very competent and able to like really guide that team and the strategy around it because he understands it. So I think some people, when they go up to senior levels, they'll have some expertise, but they know how to be a good manager. And I'm saying anything in your team, you better understand those job roles.
Okay, cool. What about the market? I mean, do you think the OT market now needs more services, more product? What's your judgment on the current OT market?
Yeah, so the OT market, I think, is vibrant. And I will tell you, a lot of the times I spend, I love our community. I'm involved in the tech community a lot, but most of my time is spent with CEOs or like heads of state or like prime minister type folks. And all of them understand OT. All of them understand the importance of it. My biggest challenge is usually some of the CISO community may not, because they came up through enterprise IT. That's their whole world. But no head of state, no CEO is confused about where they generate national security impact, or they generate revenue, or what's actually important to local communities, and that's operations. IT is very important, but it enables the business. But the purpose of the business is the OT. And so the true executives get that, and they understand OT very well. And so you start explaining OT security to them, and it's very natural to them. And so as a result, over the past decade of that becoming more and more aware to them, and them finding out that they weren't doing as much in OT security as they thought they were doing, or that like 95% of budgets were going to enterprise IT, not OT, where you generate revenue. Like, it started forcing a mind shift. And as a result, dollars and resources are getting allocated to OT security that were never getting allocated before. And I mean, like, tens of $million programs, hundreds of $million programs, some companies. Like, when you see companies investing capital into a problem, you're going to create a market as a result. And as the market grows, you're going to need more people, you're going to need more products, et cetera. And so therefore, right now, it's a very, very healthy, very vibrant market. And I would say we need more products, but I hope what happens is that we stay informed on what is a real OT challenge that we have, not how do we get an IT product into OT. And so I see a lot of conversations and startups that'll say like, oh, we're going to create antivirus for PLCs. It's like, why? Okay. Well, you have antivirus in the enterprise. Why wouldn't you have antivirus on PLCs? I'm like, that's not the right question. The question is, what problem is it solving against what threat or what issue? Like that. So you got to start with the problem, not, well, IT has it. And you got to be careful with that. I also think on the services side, we do need more butts. I think people are misunderstanding just how impactful AI is going to be. And I think you can go back and all the stuff I've said public, I've never said that before. Like, AI has been a thing for a long time. It's been a thing that could have benefited our company if we would have put like, we have an AI thing, like we would have got extra money and whatever, and we never did it because I didn't think the value was there yet. I thought it was very, very early days. We're launching an AI module because we now see the use case. Okay, here it is. But additionally, these models have changed in like the last 6 months. We're not like last year, I wouldn't be making this statement. I'd be like, hey, maybe one day. Within the last 6 months, these models are now to the point where it's going to be very disruptive to people's jobs who don't adopt AI. We're very much at a real inflection point now. And what I mean by that is like a service analyst. So we're using it internally in our engagements. We use something that used to take 3 weeks of a senior level analyst to do is getting done in a day and a half, or something that was like 20 hours of research is like 20 minutes. And so when you see that level of compression, I'm just going to need less people to do the same amount of service engagements. Now, Dragos isn't going to lay them off. Like I've got I just think it's an ethical issue. Like, we're not letting go of our people, but I'm not going to be hiring a lot more for a while it catches up. And I think that's going to happen a lot of places. I think there's gonna be a lot of places that start slowing their hiring. So I think everybody's scared that everybody's gonna get laid off. I think you'll see that at like some services companies and ones that aren't as ethical and they just have to. Maybe they're ethical, but they just have to because of the size and scale. But there's gonna be people that are adopting AI that as you do it, they just don't need another headcount to do the same thing. As an example, my legal team, I'm gonna keep all my lawyers and do all the contracts and stuff we do, but my one lawyer is gonna be able to get through 3 lawyers worth of work. That means I'm not gonna hire another lawyer for probably 3 or 4 years. And so when you look at that, it's gonna be super disruptive. And so I guess I would say products, yes. Is more service work going to happen than ever before? Yes, but maybe not by the same amount of people.
Okay. And so this is like applies to the whole company for all roles, not just
For almost
technical.
all roles. And again, I don't think this is a Dragos thing. This is a everywhere thing. But yeah, it's almost every role. Finance, IT, legal. Now some roles are a little bit more shielded. As an example, your salesperson who's going out to meet you, interacting with you, establishing a relationship, AI is not going to disrupt their job. Now, what it should do though is a good salesperson is going to be using AI tools around the research tools, the Salesforce tools we've seen, et cetera, to be more capable. So one account manager can now manage 50 accounts instead of 20. But where the human interaction is highest, obviously AI is not going to do much there. It's just going to empower them. But um, I think in our field of the type of stuff that I see OT security doing, you're going to have humans and AI. You can't just replace the humans with AI. I think that's hype. I'm a big fan of like good analysts plus good data makes a good AI outcome. But bad data and bad analysts, it doesn't matter how good your AI, it's still crap. Um, so I think it'll be AI assisted humans, but it will be impactful in the volume of work they can do. And therefore, I am nervous right now for people trying to enter the field because when I have one person that can do 3x the work, I'm going to be hiring less, and that's going to impact everybody.
I mean, I heard if you are an average programmer, the AI will replace you. How this applies to OT security? I mean, who?
Again, I don't buy that hype. Like, there's nothing I see. So I have access to the frontier models, and we have some good partnerships and so forth. It is really there's still like 90% of hype on the things that people are saying, but that 10% that's not hype is just actually very impactful. And one of the things that being said is we're going to replace these people,
Yeah.
and I don't see anything to say that that is doable in today's models. Like, I don't think you're going to replace people. Like, you're just not going to have software developers. What I'm saying is that one software developer assisted by AI can do a lot more. Therefore, we're going to slow job hiring. And I think that's the nuance to that conversation. But I also, there's no chance that we're just going to have nobody, especially in OT security. Nobody's going to be very comfortable with a completely vibe coded application going into critical infrastructure networks. It's just not going to happen. You want the human validation, you want the human expertise, you want that overlaid. But for a human to say, I'm not going to use good tools, that's also a bad answer.
Okay. So what about the challenges? I mean, what challenges you had when you started? How did you convince the company, the asset owners, and what is the current challenge that Dragos is facing?
Yeah, I think from a market perspective, it's in a good place, but the thing that could be very disruptive to this market, and I track and think about a lot, is because it's a very vibrant market, because there's money that you can make here. Other companies who would never think about OT are getting involved and going, oh, if I sell my product over here, I can make more money. And as a result, there are companies out there that don't have an OT specific product, don't have an OT specific thing that they're saying IT is good enough. And so I think one of the risks to this community is for the big enterprise IT players and the big enterprise IT security players to try to position IT as enough and like, hey, don't buy Dragos, buy the firewall and just put a module in it, like that kind of discussion. And if you don't get ahead of that, the economic buyers, the CFO and others, are going to go, oh well, why not? And it will, and that could kill the community. Basically, if people genuinely believe that you can just do IT security to get OT security outcomes, that's always a strategic risk to this community. And the way you sort of battle that is by showing value. You go, actually, here's what we can do for you that's different. And you don't just like pout and write LinkedIn posts. You just go prove it, and you show the value. The challenge I see for individual communities is like I take a couple customer calls a day usually, and prospects and so forth. And everybody's still kind of going down the same journey. And so like the people that went down the journey with me 10 years ago are in a way great place and they're wonderful and they're off doing amazing OT security things. Like I just had a call with a major company right before this interview. And they're like, so is OT different than IT? And we want to start our journey. And it's like all the same questions. And so everybody kind of starts from there and just has to do their work. So like every company is going through that same kind of challenge. And hey, IT and operations are fighting, or can we even do this? Or what are the valuable use cases? Or are there threats? And it's like the same 20 questions that every company asks. And so at this point, we're just like, cool, you're probably going to ask these 20 questions. Here's our cheat sheet for you and try to help you accelerate that process.
Okay, cool. You've had a lot of experience. That's why you have the 20 questions ready.
Yeah. Got a lot of smart people, man. I'm very fortunate to get to work with them.
Cool,